Hello, mis amigos en Harmony. Today we are going to learn about EMDR therapy. And this is for you, particularly if you don't like to talk in therapy, or you are experiencing trauma and you don't want to talk about that trauma, or you are an English as a second language and the only resource that you have is a person that it doesn't speak your language. Whatever language you speak and you are with another therapist in another language, this is for you. Look for that. They need to be trained. And today we have an expert on that. We have a licensed social worker in New York, Mollie Volinsky. Stay with us. Living in harmony is possible if you know your emotions and how to handle them. I am Dr. Carmen Roman, and I will share with you the current psychology by myself or by interviewing experts who will inspire you. Learn how to live a life of fullness and how to recover your emotional harmony. Welcome to Emotions in Harmony. Welcome back. I really enjoyed interviewing Mollie, and not only because of the EMDR and what she brings to us to learn about it, but also I just enjoy listening from her. Just get to listen this episode, get to share it, and particularly consider, if you are living with trauma, consider seriously to listen this episode, because our desire for you is that you start whatever cycle in your life, whatever new beginnings, you start trauma-free. And also, since we are talking about trauma-free, I am launching, actually we launched a couple days ago in Spanish, a challenge, a 7 days challenge about living with emotional freedom. What you can do in 7 days, very simple, basic steps to live emotionally free. And this is because this is my job, receive anxiety and stress and depression from my clients and transform. Sometimes I need to transform it in my body. And it's very familiar, the topic to me. So I put these 7 steps, clear, simple steps that you can follow for a week and repeat and repeat and repeat. And you may still go to therapy because that's not a substitution for therapy. You may still need to do EMDR, anything that you need to do, but at least you cover your basics. If you ask me, please send me an email or whatever and say, Carmen, I don't speak Spanish because now Reto de Libertad Emocional is only in Spanish. But if you want it in English, just send me an email and say, Carmen, I want it in English. And that will motivate me to translate faster. Okay, here we are with Mollie, and I hope you enjoy this interview. Hello, my amigos en Harmony. We are back, and we are here with Mollie, as we promised. So Mollie Volinsky is a licensed clinical social worker in New York, in the New York area. And the very exciting thing about Mollie is that she works with EMDR. And we are going to learn everything. I am going to learn with you guys, because even though I have been working with trauma for many years, I have never get trained in EMDR. So I am very curious. So you can tell us everything, Mollie, everything about it. And especially, I know this is the time of the year that we need to think about renovating ourselves, about beginning, about starting. What about starting trauma-free?
That would be great.
That would be great. Trauma-free. Please, Mollie, tell me how I can start my life trauma-free.
Great. Thank you for having me, Carmen. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so EMDR is my specialty. It stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. There's a lot of sort of clinical lingo involved that I'm going to try and refrain from using just for your listeners' purposes so they don't have to deal with that.
So first of all is eye movement?
Eye movement, desensitization,
okay,
and reprocessing.
That sounds like very fancy.
Yes, it does. It does.
Yes. So tell me in simple words, what is it?
So basically what it is that I like to use this analogy. When you're a little kid and you touch a hot stove, that sends a message from your hand to your brain that that's hot. Don't touch that anymore. That's a good adaptive imprint for your brain to have, right? Not to touch hot things. Similarly, if you've experienced trauma, that can send a message to your brain of, I'm not safe. I can't trust people. Everyone's after me. And it creates that imprint in your brain. And so your behavior and your body reacts to that reality that I'm unsafe. And that can be very helpful at the time of the trauma to keep you safe. But in your life, once you've passed the trauma, it's not so helpful anymore. So what EMDR does is we kind of unstick those stuck imprints in your brain. So that's it in a nutshell. It's an 8-step process, an 8-step treatment, where the first part of the process is we use various techniques to what we call widen your window of tolerance, because the desensitizing piece of EMDR, it can feel very hard. I had a client once compare it to, it's like when you go to get a facial done, the extraction part. It's painful, but it feels good and it's necessary. And so that's kind of what the desensitization part is like.
So tell me how it looks like. If I am in your office and I am doing the first step, what is it?
Yes. So you're in my office. The first step is I take your history. I find out what's going on with you. Next, we do exercises that are a lot of like guided imagery exercises that build up your internal resources. So exercises that allow you to feel calm, maybe even provide you with some support or nurturing or strength that you might not be getting from outside people. And we help you build up those internal resources. And that's usually done through guided meditations and more and body work and that kind of thing. It depends on the client. Then once we feel like you're ready for the desensitization piece, what that entails is it was discovered by this woman named Francine Shapiro in the 80s. And she discovered that by thinking about a difficult memory, and having her eyes move back and forth, helped her process that memory. So there are different techniques now. With me, what I do is I have clients hold a buzzer in each hand, and that causes your eyes to go back and forth. And the reason why it's helpful is there are many different theories, but one theory is that it's akin to REM sleep. You know, when you're sleeping and you're in deep REM, your eyes are moving back and forth. And REM sleep is so important because it helps you process the day's activities. So by having your eyes mimic that motion whilst thinking about a traumatic memory, it helps you process it better.
Oh, so you are kind of pulling a natural resource that I have. I mean, bringing that natural resource to apply to that trauma experience, to that traumatic memory.
Absolutely. I
remember many years ago, it was a wave of, I don't remember now the name because all my training is in Spanish.
Okay.
I was a clinician for 15 years in Spanish. So, but it was these exercises that you need to cross one side of the lateral exercises, like you move your arm to the left and then to the right, and you move your leg. And then it was something like biomagnetic or bioprogramming or something like that. So this is something similar. It's like moving, crossing.
It sounds like it. I mean, the term is called bilateral stimulation. So getting both sides of the body, both sides of the brain. That's another theory as to why it's so effective, is that it incorporates your right brain and your left brain.
Mm-hmm. I believe that. I truly believe that. It's like I'm calling my analytic mind to my creative mind, and both of them need to revisit the story.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay.
Absolutely. Yes. And so that's what desensitization entails and it can be a great addition to traditional talk therapy or a great substitute, because when that happens, the desensitization happens, the client does not need to be narrating what's going on in their head to me. They're experiencing it. Periodically, I'll check in and say, what do you notice? And they'll give me a few brief words, and then we'll continue back with the buzzers with their eyes moving from right to left.
And that talking therapy is part of your service too. I mean, they go and they stay with you, and part of your tools is the EMDR, I'm assuming.
Yes. And so exposure therapy is pretty common treatment for trauma. And so we like to think of this less as exposure therapy. And instead of reliving these moments, it's like we ask you to imagine it like you're watching a movie. And so there's some distance where you don't exactly re-feel all of those same thoughts and feelings and emotions, but there's a bit of distance and I'm in the room with you facilitating this movie.
It sounds calming. It sounds safe.
Yeah, it is. And it's helpful to have, what's great is that the client is doing all of the work themselves. Their brain is doing what it's naturally supposed to be doing to process this memory. I'm merely a facilitator in it and a source of support and comfort. And so I think the combination of those two aspects that I provide is really helpful in the desensitization part, which I said can be difficult. It can be very emotional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you work mainly with women?
Yes.
And what is the difference? What do you find that we women need to heal from trauma?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've found that with the Me Too movement recently, there's a lot more education about what trauma is and what it entails. I think in the past, we sort of thought as trauma as limited to like war veterans or survivors of violent crimes, that kind of thing. And we realize, with the Me Too movement, women have realized pieces that have happened to us in the past that didn't feel quite right were in fact not right and weren't okay. And it has left an imprint that I need to process.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've definitely found that to be a newer piece of the work with women and with trauma.
So Mollie, if I am a woman and I don't know, it's sometimes I am just living paycheck to paycheck, why I need to invest in therapy? I'm just having fun, Mollie, throwing you all these questions because I am enjoying the way you describe the EMDR. So tell me, if I am living paycheck to paycheck, why I will put my money and go and do this kind of therapy if I am living in trauma?
That is a great question. And that I think is, and we could get into a much larger conversation about our healthcare system and how mental health is incredibly undervalued. But unfortunately,
Thank you, Mollie. Yes. Because they may not pay that session for you, probably, yeah.
Right. And with the problematic way the healthcare system is now, right, therapy can be an investment and can be expensive and a financial hardship.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like to think of it in the way that you described as an investment in my future. How is my trauma impacting me currently, day to day? Some people experience chronic pain that they don't know where it comes from, just depression, constant stress and anxiety, and they're not sleeping, they're not eating. There's so many symptoms, and that can it really just takes away your joy to live. And so if you are able to manage the funds to participate in EMDR, that will alleviate so much of that you'll be able to enjoy your life more thoroughly and feel more fulfilled. But that's exactly what it is. It's an investment in your future. If you're a mother, it's an investment in your children. It's an investment. And, we invest in all sorts of things like gym memberships, getting our nails done, that kind of thing. Which is all great and great self-care. But sometimes we got to think of it differently that, maybe if I just held off on getting my nails done for a few months, I could save that and invest it into this kind of treatment.
Actually, what I suggest sometimes to my client is like, if you invest in therapy, the makeup will do a better job later.
Yeah.
Because you will be happier.
That's great. I like that.
And you will need less makeup or you will be more beautiful. But also in the deeper level, I like that we are talking about EMDR because EMDR is one of the alternatives in therapy.
Yes.
It's not the mainstream.
Nope.
Yeah. So I want to be wise and invest in something that is going to really give me back my peace.
Yeah.
And my freedom from trauma, which is how we start this episode. Yeah. I really want to be trauma free because the trauma is kind of this ability that nobody can see.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't allow me to go and ask for a better job or to do the interview for the work of my dreams. It doesn't allow me to focus on raising my children or to be happy in my relationship with my husband. It's like, it doesn't allow me to do, or my wife or whatever it is. It's like, it doesn't allow me to be free in my body.
I love that. It's true. Trauma can feel like a prison. We also talk a lot about in trauma that there is no time. Time stops. Whenever that traumatic moment happened, you're living in that time. Your body, your emotions, your mind. And so it does feel like a prison.
Yes. And this description of EMDR that you are telling me is really getting into the trauma, really working into the trauma. And to tell you the truth, Mollie, before talking to you today, I was not interested in EMDR because I really have many years working with trauma, and probably I do many things. I already do guided imagery or whatever. But the way you describe it is like, it totally makes sense. I am using part of my brain that it already works in other areas to rest, to regenerate myself. But we are calling it for a purpose.
And I will also say, right, EMDR can seem a little out there to people. That being said, it is an evidence-based therapy. It's the number one therapy used by the VA to treat PTSD for veterans. And what I found really interesting is that when they did brain scans of people who'd endured trauma, that the part of your brain that's responsible for speech was not lit up at all. Whereas if you had not experienced trauma, it was fine. So that tells us that sometimes traditional talk therapy, isn't as helpful as it could be because you don't have access to the speech part. You can't talk about it. So EMDR is a great alternative where you don't need to have that part of your brain and you can still process the trauma.
And I'm going to say something else, going deeper in this point. I am thinking like you are an English speaker, and many women Latinas listen to this podcast. A lot of women Latinas. But I am thinking, if my English is not as good and I am going to take trauma therapy, I probably will want to go with you because we are talking about nonverbal communication.
Mm-hmm.
So, because some of these women say, Carmen, but when my memories come, they come in Spanish. Yeah, for example, but they are now very good English speakers because they are now raised in this country. Yeah, but what you are talking is they don't even need to talk to me that memory. They need to they process.
Absolutely. You bring up a great point. EMDR, if you have a therapist that, like me, only speaks English, it's great for other English as a second language clients because you don't need to speak that much because you're the one processing it. That's a great point.
And I am very grateful for this, Mollie, because as a Spanish speaking therapy, my schedule is full. Like I really, sometimes people need to wait a couple of weeks to see me the first time. And I need to raise this awareness. Like if you now speak English and your English is good, all of these therapies like EMDR, people who work with art therapy, all of these non-verbal therapies are going to be really useful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that guides, as a client, that guides the options that you have.
Yes, very true. Yeah, and that's a great point.
And I'm thinking, Mollie, because I had clients who speak only Chinese or only Vietnamese,
mm-hmm.
and when I am there, is like, we need to go into art therapy.
Yep.
Yeah? Because I need to take them there, into art, into something that is nonverbal. So in that case, I'm thinking, oh my God, you're a blessing in New York.
And right, exactly. In a city where there's so much diversity, people speaking so many different kinds of languages, it can be really helpful. And like you mentioned, art is a great therapy for clients and practitioners who speak different languages. I utilize a lot of art within the EMDR process, which adds to how it could be very helpful with clients who speak English as a second language or they're not very confident in their English speaking skills. Absolutely.
This conversation is going really amazing. Tell me something else that you want to share with us about the EMDR or about being, in general, trauma-free. We want to start this new cycle in our lives, trauma-free, Mollie.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great time to check in with yourselves and check in with how you're feeling, not just emotionally or mentally, but how your body is feeling. I think it's important to integrate all these aspects of yourself and take stock of what's going on. And once you've done that, you can decide whether you want to make that investment in your future about healing some of this trauma, right? We can't make the trauma go completely away, but we can make it feel less impactful and less of a prison like we talked about, right? You can get some freedom and some peace.
And we are in more than 79 countries, 80 countries. So if somebody is, I don't know, in Timbuktu, we have a lot of Chinese in China. If somebody's in China and they want to look for a therapist, what they need to look for, Mollie?
There's a great organization that regulates EMDR, the training, the consultation. And on that website, you can look up your area and what providers are near you. So that's called EMDRIA, EMDRIA.org.
And we are going to have it in the notes. If you are listening to us and driving, don't worry. You have it in the notes. When you finish, you can just scroll down and find it there. EMDRIA.org.
Yes.
So if they are in different parts of the world, they can go and find an EMDR therapist.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just a quick side note, something I think is really neat is EMDRIA creates different groups of therapists that now go to places that have experienced recent disasters, whether that's natural disasters, whether that's, gun violence, that kind of thing, all over the world, and provide sort of a shortened version of the EMDR protocol for groups to hopefully minimize the likelihood of PTSD taking place later on.
Yes, thank you for that, because we have been experiencing a lot of group trauma.
Yes.
Collective trauma in Mexico, in Chile, in Venezuela. There is a lot of this going on. And here in the United States, we have some areas too.
Right. And so it's great to have, a group of skilled providers go to your community and see if they can help in that way.
I really appreciate your point of view, because sometimes we think trauma is something that I can live with. It's like, oh yeah, it happened, but I can work, I can move, I can talk and get my food and whatever. So my life can keep going. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And no, because not going with quality. That's the difference.
Right. Quality. And it's always amazing to me that sometimes people who've experienced the worst trauma have managed to sort of filter the effects of their trauma into something productive. So people that work a lot and are very high functioning at work are some of the people that have experienced the most trauma. But as a society, we value hard workers, people that stay past 10 o'clock to midnight. That's not a problem. They're good workers. But really, they're experiencing no other life besides work. And so that's another way of looking at it.
Where they can find you?
So you can find me at my website, which is Mollie Volinsky, lcsw.com. And you can feel free, my phone number, my email address is on there. Feel free to reach out.
Yes, they can go and find you. And if they want to take therapy with you, it's going to be in New York, yeah?
Yes.
They need to live in the New York area.
Yes, that's correct.
Mm-hmm. If they have any other question, can they contact you or?
Absolutely. I'm happy to answer all sorts of questions and love to speak to all different kinds of people.
Because sometimes they just have a quick question or something, they can just contact you.
Absolutely.
And if you are in the New York area and you are with anxiety or trauma or stress, you have Mollie there. Mollie Volinsky, and it's Mollie Volinsky.
LCSW.
LCSW.com.
Great.
Yeah. And we are going to put that in the notes too, so they can find you. I really appreciate that you explained to us what is EMDR. And you explained to us, I think you gave us hope.
Oh, good.
We can start real trauma-free, not covering, not talking, real work on trauma.
Great. I'm so happy to offer any kind of insight that I can. And it was so nice speaking with you and hearing your input. I think this was a great conversation. And thank you for speaking with me.
Thank you, Mollie. And dear listeners, I am so glad if you are here until the end of this episode. I am very grateful for you staying with us. And we really want you to start trauma-free, this new cycle of your life. Please go back and just look into these 150 episodes that we already have. You will find some painful but very useful topics, and you will find some hopeful and kind of uplifting topics. So if you are a little bit of anxiety after this topic today, because it's kind of anxiety provoking, please take care of yourself. Please go for a walk, do a meditation, pray, something that is helpful to you. And you know that there is hope and there is help out there in any part of the world that you are. And please share with your friends and family, because we want everybody to be trauma-free. Thank you. Bye for now. We have reached the end of another episode of the podcast Emotions in Harmony. See you the next week. Visit www.emotionsinharmony.org, where you can subscribe, find the notes, and be in direct contact with me. Thanks for listening.